What's up, everyone? Azariel here, and welcome to another episode of Yu-Gi-Oh 101 Retro Modernization, where I take past archetypes, cards that are difficult to use in today's era in Yu-Gi-Oh, and I make builds out of them to make them playable. Not tournament worthy, just make them playable. Since people seem like they don't have the ability to do it. I kind of take it as a challenge upon myself since I do it anyway. Why not make a series about it, right? So that's what I've been doing since, you know, mid early this year, and I've made countless builds with cards people have literally said are impossible to make builds with these days, from the Gate Guardian to the Amazoness to the Cloudians to the the uh the Mirage Knight to Spirit of the Pharaoh, which was last week's Retro Modernization. And like I said last week, that the way that Spirit of the Pharaoh is summoned to the field, that method is actually going to get crossed over into next week's, which is today. And I also gave a hint as to what build that I was going to be making. And that was the hint was that the build that I'm going to be focusing the next retro modernization on is based around the ace monster of the person that threw Yugi Moto's cards, Exodia cards, over into the water, overboard, on their way to Duelist Kingdom. And nobody really got it. And for those who will pretty much watch the earlier days of Yu-Gi-Oh, then you got like the first series, then you guys know what I'm talking about. The people that have pretty much started watching Yu-Gi-Oh since Yu-Gi-Oh GX or started watching it any time after that, you guys don't know. But the ace monster I am talking about is Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, which was originally Great Moth, but then they gave him this Weevil Underwood. And this is what today's retro modernization is going to be based around. Now, first, before I get started, this was a very, very fucking difficult build because this needs so much. It needs so fucking much, but I kind of broke it down, I whittled it down to just 44 cards, and it works surprisingly well. It just takes patience. It takes patience out the ass. You can't make any mistakes. You can't, like this is one of those builds where it takes a lot of fucking protection. It takes a lot of protection. No condoms. It takes a lot of protection because you got to plan for this, you got to plan for that. You have to look at, well, at least when I make a build, I look at what's happening in today's era in Yu-Gi-Oh, or what's going on for this format, and I kind of build some countermeasures up against that. What is it that I most likely have to deal with, and what is a way that I can get rid of these problems? And this is basically the combined with everything else. This is the best that I could do because for a monster like Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, or even Great Moth for that matter, it literally takes time in order to get it on the field. But before I dive into all of that, let me talk about um, what. Hold on, let me mute that. Let me talk to you guys about the cards that I have in the main deck, what I have in the extra deck, and what I have on the side, as well as a couple of other cards that you can possibly add into there that I didn't have no room to show you guys like I normally would. But nevertheless, let's get started. First up, Petted Moth. We have three Petted Moth, three Aztecapede, the worm warrior, three Cocoon of Evolution. Two, I have two Danny Pond, two Doomdozer, three Gokipon, two Great Moth, three Howling Insect, two Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, Dark Hole, Foolish Burial, three Insect Barrier, two Mystical Space Typhoon, one one for one, two Astral Barrier, three DNA Surgery, three Fetus Chain, three Safe Zone, and two Spirit Barrier. Extra deck, I have Divine Dragon, three Divine Dragon Knight Felgrand, 3 Levier, the Sea Dragon, 2 Silent Honor Arc, 1 number 34 Terabyte, uh, number 39 Utopia Roots, 2 number 47 Nightmare Shark, 1 number 54 Lionheart, and 1 rank 1 F-Zero Future King Hope. So these are the monsters that I have, and for the side deck, I have 3 Block Spider, 3 Resonance Insect, 2 Mimic Clay, 1 Mystical Space Typhoon, 3 Layer Wire, and 3 Pyro Clock of Destiny. So this is what the goal is. Now, the way this build works, right, is that the ace monster is either Great Moth and or perfectly ultimate Great Moth. Now, the way that you get these monsters out is when you have them in hand, or like whenever you get them in hand, you have to be very time savvy of your turns, as well as um, being able to protect the 2 monsters or protecting the 2 cards that needs to remain on the field for the allotted time in order to get those monsters on the field. So with Moth, um, it needs to be equipped with Cocoon of Evolution from the hand. It cannot be equipped from the field to the monster. It has to be equipped from your hand to the monster. And then the defense goes to Petted Moth. So then you'll be able to switch it into defense position later on. But then you have to protect it until you're able to do that. So with that being said, these 2 right here are the key cards in order to getting these out. Now, for those who know about Weevil Underwood's build, and you guys know about, like the moths and all that, you may be asking me, why don't I have Larva Moth in there? Let me see, hold on. Why don't I have Larva Moth in there? What's the purpose of not having Larva Moth in there? My question to you is, what would be the purpose in having Larva Moth in there? You have to understand, and this is for all my new people out there that haven't seen cards like this before, or people who've been in the game and haven't seen cards like this. Larva Moth, Great Moth, and Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth are what you consider to be Nami monsters. Nami monsters are monsters that cannot be special summoned by any other ways than what's described in the card text. So there's only one way to get it on the field, and that's it. You can't special summon it from the graveyard. It's not like other cards where they need to be special summoned from the hands, such as ritual monsters and such, and you can special summon them later on if they were special summoned correctly. Those are called semi-Nami monsters, the monsters that have to be special summoned from the hand first, and they have to be special summoned correctly. And then if they get sent to the graveyard after that, you'll be able to special summon them later on in the duel. However, with monsters like Larva Moth, perfectly ultimate Great Moth, as well as Great Moth, they are considered to be Nami monsters. There's only one way to get them on the field, and you can't special summon them by any other ways. So now they changed up the card text these days to tell you that, okay, it can't be special summoned other ways. But during the earlier days in Yu-Gi-Oh, the way you knew that was in the card text. It said this card can only be special summoned by tributing Petted Moth on the 4th of your turns, or like this card can only be special summoned. That card text. I kind of read too much into the card text on that monster. But yeah, it would tell you that this card can only be special summoned by, these methods. And that was just to let you know that there wasn't any other way to get it on the field besides that method. And when you look at, so knowing that, looking at a card like Larva Moth, there is no other way to get this card on the field. It is literally a Nami level 2 500 attack beat stick. Let that sink in for a moment. It is a level 2 500 attack beat stick that can only be special summoned by a certain method. What would be the purpose in having this in the build? This card by far has to be the most useless card in today's era in Yu-Gi-Oh, bar none. Why the hell would anyone want to summon this thing? So by me knowing that, I took it out of the build. I didn't even focus on it, and I just focused on Great Moth and Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, considering that they don't have any effects, quote unquote, that activate on the field. They pretty much, once they hit the field, they're just beat sticks at that point. And since those are the two, strongest monsters out of the three of them, out of Larva Moth, Great Moth, and Perfectly Ultimate, I just decided to focus on Great Moth and Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, because since you're basically going to get more out of them, since they're only going to be able to be beat sticks once they hit the field, um, pretty much you can get more out of them than out of Larva Moth. So I just took that out. It was pretty much a no-brainer. So moving on, um, first of all, in order to search out the cards you need, I've added in Goki Pawn and Danny Pawn. With Danny Pawn, it searches insects from the deck, add them to your hand with 1,000 or less defense. And with Goki Pawn, it does the same thing, except it bases it on attack that has 1,500 or less. So between the two of these, you'll have some good searches. But to get the monster directly on the field, Howling Insect was added in so that you can special summon either you know moth, like the normal moth monster, or you'll be able to get either Danny Pawn, or you can either get Danny Pawn or Goki Pawn on the field so that they can get destroyed by battle, and you'll be able to search out either moth or the Kakuna evolution. Now, the reason why I added more Goki Pond in there was because between Howling Insect and Danny Pond, you're able to search out Moth. Like that's no hard task to do. And the reason why I added in more Goki Pond, since that Kakuna Evolution can only be attached as an equipped spell card to uh, Moth from the hand, then that means you have to add it to your hand. It can't be special summoned to the field, otherwise you're just gonna fuck it up. And with that being said, Kakuna Evolution has 0 attack, 2,000 defense. So with Gokipon, you can search that out, instantly. Which is so that's the reason why that's in there. Now, if all else fails, you guys know me. I always put backup plans in my build. You know, as far as the monsters go. If everything else fails, that's the reason why I have Aztecape, the Worm Warrior, and Doomsdozer in there. Because between the both of these monsters, they get special summon from your hand by banishing two, either one with Aztecape or two with Doomdozer. They banish insects from the field, from your graveyard, in order to special summon themselves to the field. And when they inflict battle damage to your opponent, they have to send the top card of their deck to the graveyard. Now, this may not be the best, option with certain decks out there, such as like the Light Sworns and you know, like the Dark Worlds and certain other builds that kind of thrive off of being discarded and monsters that get sent to the graveyard. Uh, in order for the overall deck strategy, it may not be the best option to have cards like this, but this is the best for the sake of the build, because there's not much else you can do. Like I said, like you need to put some offense up, and there's no guarantee in today's era in Yu-Gi-Oh that you're really going to be able to get off Great Moth and Perfectly Ultimate Moth, because once your opponent catches wind of what you're doing, obviously they're going to target Kakuna Evolution with like an MST, since it is treated as an equipped spell card at that point. They can destroy it with MST or any other effect from a monster or a trap that destroys spells, you know, on their opponent's side of the field or on your side of the field. So it's no guarantee that you're going to be able to pull these off. So you need some type of backup plan, and which is the reason why I said that this monster or this build requires a lot of protection. Hence the reason why I got 3 insect barrier in there, and of course the typical, you know, strategy when using insect barrier: use DNA surgery, change all face-up monsters on the field to insect type. Insect barrier prevents insect type monsters that your opponent controls from attacking. They cannot declare an attack. So any effects that activate from declaring attacks, they can't even do that. They can't not they cannot declare any type of attacks. So also with Aztekapede and Doomdozer, you need at least one with Aztekapede to get to in order to special summon it from the hand. So that's the reason why I added in Foolish Burial to get to get at least one insect in the graveyard that you feel like you're not going to need, and which would either be cards like Gokipon, or even cards like Danny Pon, or whatever the case is, and then maybe even some rare cases, even another Aztekapede, or even like a Kakuna Evolution, or even a fucking Petit Moth, you know. Um, just take your pick and just choose wisely. Just choose wisely, because yeah, like you're gonna have to make sure that you're making the right choice, because you don't want to send the wrong card to the graveyard for the time uh, in the duel. So Dark Hole is obviously in there to help you gain some type of field advantage, because you're gonna need all of it. And I have Safe Zone. Now Safe Zone is a card that I don't use. Now, not in one build have you ever that I've made have you seen me use a card like Safe Zone, because I feel like for the same reason that Cocoon of Evolution can be a very big weak point, so can Safe Zone. Now, Safe Zone to go on is meant to be equipped to Petit Moth in order to protect it. Um, but at the same time, if your opponent MSTs Safe Zone, then this monster goes to the graveyard, or any monster that you have it equipped to. So there's an issue right there with that I don't necessarily like, but it helps when you look at the pros versus the cons. Yeah, that's like a big, you know, loss for the build, because it is, since you're trying to focus on summoning perfectly Ultimate Moth or Great Moth. Um, it is a big loss. Like you want to keep uh, this monster with Kakuna Evolution on the field for as long as you need to. But now, since the monster can't be targeted by card effects, or destroyed by your opponent's card effects, or be destroyed by battle, you don't have to worry about it being attacked directly anyway. So it's not an issue, because really you're going to be playing a defensive game with Moth until you can get Great Moth, or even or its stronger counterpart on the field anyway. So you don't have to worry about attacking your opponent directly for that. So that's the thing. You have to be really careful with this. Also, I added an Astral Barrier and Spirit Barrier for the reason that while you control a monster with Spirit Barrier, hint hint, you got Petit Moth on the field equipped with Cocoon Evolution. You don't take any battle damage, but at the same time, with Astral Barriers on the field along with it, you know you can make those attacks directly, so thus protecting your monsters from getting destroyed by battle, or your Moth from being destroyed by battle, because you don't have a card like this. Well, actually, you would, because it's up to you whether or not you want to make that attack a uh, direct attack or not. So, yeah, that comes in handy. But when Astral Barrier as well as Spirit Barrier is on the field simultaneously, you pretty much don't take any battle damage. When your opponent attacks you and you have both of these cards face up on the field, with Astral Barrier you can make that attack a direct attack, and since Spirit Barrier is on the field, you have a monster on the field, so you don't take any battle damage. So it's basically like a card combo going on there. So that's one thing. And Fiendish Chain is in there for the simple fact that today's era in Yu-Gi-Oh! Obviously you're going to go up against monsters with effects, and you're going to need a way to nullify those effects so that they don't activate their effects that can destroy your cards that you need. And Fiendish Chain was like the best option that I could think of without having to worry about life points too much. To a lesser, so I guess if you feel like that's not good enough, maybe you can. The reason why I picked this is because your opponent, the monster's effects get negated, as well as the effect monster cannot attack. Now, some people would rather have Skill Drain in the build, which is understandable because Skill Drain is a good card. It nullifies the effects of all face-up monsters on the field. And considering that, when Danny when Danny Pawn and Howling Insect and Goki Pawn get destroyed by battle, they have to get sent to the graveyard in order for their effects to activate. So Skill Drain wouldn't affect those monsters at all, but since Skill Drain only affects what happens on the field, you know, you see what I'm saying? When a monster hits the graveyard and it has an effect that activates when it hits the graveyard after being destroyed a certain way, then Skill Drain is no longer active on that card. Considering, since Skill Drain only affects the field, so their effects will still go through. So that if they get destroyed by battle, you'll still be able to get those searches off. So in that regard, Skill Drain may be preferable to some people, but I like the fact that my opponent won't be able to attack me because it may be a time where I don't get DNA surgery or astral barrier and the spirit barrier something like card combo off, or it may be a time where I don't have safe zone. You know, it it could happen. You know, and in that event, that's when Fiendish Chain comes into play because that way I'll be able to take care of that problem. Now, again, Skill Drain may be preferable, and if that's the case, just take out Fiendish Chain and replace it with Skill Drain, or other cards that you feel like you won't need like that, and what have you. Now, for the side deck, I put in 3 Layer Wire as well as 3 Resonance Insects, considering that they kind of work together hand in hand. With Resonance Insect, it when it's sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add one level 5 or higher insect type monster from your deck. Doom Dozer can be searched by it, or you can get a Great Moth or a perfectly ultimate Great Moth um, from your deck to your hand. That way, when the time comes for you to special summon said monster, you'll be able to do it because you already have it in your hand. And also, when a card gets banished, you can send one insect type monster from your deck to the graveyard, which is good for a couple. I mean, you have Skull Marked Ladybug. Let me show you this. Skull Mark. Hold on. I think it has a hyphen in it. That's probably why I didn't search it. Yeah, here it is. Skull Mark Ladybug. You can increase your life points to 1,000. I think it was another one. Gold. Um, no, this one increases life points. Okay, so never mind. Scratch that. So Skull Mark Ladybug is an option, as well as some other insects that. Let me see. Graveyard. Sent to the graveyard. Let me look this up real quick on the fly because I don't remember if I seen another one. It did sent to the graveyard. Sent to the graveyard. Nope, that's pretty much it. I mean, there's Cockroach Knight, but you're pretty much just putting the same monster on top of the other deck. There's really no reason to run Cockroach Knight at all. Um, and the other ones have to be destroyed by battle if they have effects that activate when they get destroyed and sent to the graveyard. So Skullmark Ladybug would be an option there if you're gonna run Resonance Insect. That may be something else that you wanna there may be something else that you want to check out. So layer wire, you have to remove from play one insect type monster from your graveyard to select one monster on your opponent's select one monster your opponent controls, and then the monster is destroyed. So since the insect that you will be removing is Resonance Insect, that could be a combo right there. You destroy your opponent's monster, activate Resonance Insect, as well as increase your life points by 1,000. So that could be helpful. Now, Block Spider, this is one of the latest insect type monsters that's been released in the OCG. It hasn't come to the TCG yet, but just for the sake of using it on Dueling Network, yeah, that's the reason why I have it in here. So Block Spider is a monster that protects your other insect type monsters from being attacked. And when you have multiple ones on the field, when you have multiple block spiders on your field, your opponent won't be able to make an attack. Considering that, because when block spiders again on the field, your opponent won't be able to select any other insect type monster on the field for an attack. So having two means that they won't be able to make an attack at all, because their effects kind of work with each other to prevent any attacks from happening. It's one of those effects. So to get Block Spider on the field quicker, I cited Mimicry, because when your opponent controls a monster, you can target one of your level 2 or lower defense position monsters you control, and special summon one monster from your deck that has the same name in face-up defense position. And of course, it gets banished when it leaves the field, but nevertheless, it can protect your monsters, or your little Petted Moth. And I added in another MST for obvious reasons, and Pyro Clock of Destiny. Now, this is a card you don't see too much of, and it doesn't really have many uses outside of a build like this. It really doesn't. So, with Pyro Clock of Destiny, it moves the turn count forward by one turn. So, the turn in which this card is activated continues as normal. So, let's say, for example, it's your let's see, one, two, three. Okay, so let's say, for example, that you're on your third turn. You know what I'm saying? And like this is like turn three. So if you set it, if you set, this card on turn one, which you would be going first since you would be going third as well, you activate this, it will be considered to be turn four. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it moves the turn count up by one, which is great for which is great for Great Moth and uh, its stronger counterpart, Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth. It moves the turn counts forward so that you'll be able to get those monsters out quicker. The reason why I don't have it in the build is because I'm more focused on protecting my Petted Moth, and with the right defense, you won't have to worry about having a card like Pyro Clock of Destiny in your build, which in many cases you wish you didn't have, especially when you have, the two monsters or the two cards on the field that you would have, or that you will be using it on. So that's it right there. So for the extra deck monsters, Divine Dragon Felgrand is in there in the event that you do get these monsters on the field and they aren't doing enough for whatever you need them for, you know, exceed into Divine Dragon Knight Felgrand to help you out. It can nullify your opponent's monster's effects, or it can uh, negate its own effects so that it won't be destroyed by any card effects that your opponent has or your dark hole. Um, I added in Levier, the Sea Dragon, considering that you're going to be banishing other insects, whether it be Gokipon, Howling Insect, whatever. At least you'll be able to get those monsters back on the field. So that's why that's in there. Silent Honor Arc is in there, obviously for protection. When your opponent has a monster on the field that can't be destroyed by battle or by card effect, you know, you at least you'll be able to do something to get that monster off of their field. So that's why that's in there. Uh, Number 34, Terabyte. We haven't seen this card in action since since the first wave of Exceeds came out. This card has not seen any action. Now I put it in there as an option. Hence the reason why I only have one in there. That if your opponent does control a face-up level 4 or lower, face-up attack position monster, you can still do something with it. You can gain control of it. Um, you know, you'll be able to get the monster out the way, basically. To do something. And so be it that it could be like a marshmallow or a monster that can't be destroyed by battle, or any type of monster like that, you can take control of it and you'll be able to get it out the way so that you can directly attack your opponent. Utopia Roots. It's easier to get out than Terabyte, and it's pretty much just a beat stick. That's what it's in there for. It's in there to counter your opponent's Exceed monsters, and to try to get like the one up. So that's why that's in there. Number 47, Nightmare Shark, is a card that um, it has an effect that it can you, that you can target one water monster you control, and this turn that monster can attack your opponent directly, and other monsters wouldn't be able to attack. So this would be good for like that last little bit of damage that you need to do. Your opponent has a bunch of monsters on their side, and you know just exceed summon into this using Cocoon Evolution if you need to. Howling Insect, both of these are level 3, so in the event you may have Cocoon Evolution and Howling Insect at your disposal to exceed summon into Nightmare Shark, so that's why that's in there. Number 54, Lionheart, is a good card. Pretty good beat stick. Um, it has an effect that inflicts battle damage, the same amount of battle damage that your opponent inflicted onto you. However, it also has a secondary effect that when it activates its first effect, you'll be able to uh, detach a card, and you'll be able to inflict the damage that you would have received onto them. So they'll be taking twice as much battle damage from this monster's effect. I mean, yeah, they'll be taking twice as much effect damage from Lionheart's effect. So that's in there. And I have Hope in there in the event that you have, let's say, two monsters on the field that, which would pretty much, at this point, it would only be either Livier the Sea Dragon or Divine Dragon Knight Felgrand. In the rare event that you have these two on the field, and you want to take your opponent's monsters, that's why this is in there. Now, it takes two non-number exceed monsters to be overlaid in order to get this out. And it can't be destroyed by battle. And you don't take any and neither player takes any battle damage from battles involving the card. And at the start of at the end of the damage step, if it battled, you'll be able to take control of your opponent's monster until the end of that battle phase, and it can protect itself because if it would be destroyed, you can remove one exceed material instead. So it has multiple uses. It can protect your life points. You can take your opponent's monster, use it against them, etc., etc. So there's a lot there, and this is pretty much the build. Now, I've already explained Larva Moth. If you're going to use Resonance Insect again, try to fit Skull Mark Ladybug in there somewhere. That way you can actually have a monster to send from the field to the graveyard that will do something. And on top of that, you'll have an insect in the graveyard for Aztecapede or Doomdozer. And yeah, man, that's pretty much it. Oh, let me add this in there. For some fucking reason, I always forget to add Gaga Cowboy in the builds that I make, and anytime I use one of these builds, I end up in a position where if I had Gaga Cowboy, I would have won. You know, you guys seen the fan days. It always ends up being that situation, so I'm just throwing it in there just in case. but but yeah, so this is the build. Take one of these out, put another Gaga Cowboy in there. Don't need that many Leviers. But this is the build, man. It takes extremely. You have to be extremely patient in order to use a build like this. It definitely wasn't easy for me to make, but I made it playable. It's difficult to use. It is not for people that want something quick, or you have to have patience when playing all of my retro modernized builds, but this one by far is going to take the most patience because it is not easy at all to use. So last thing I want to do is I want to change. Man, yeah. I think we're gonna call it Weevil's will because it was Weevil's ace monster, and it was his will to get the monster on the field. It sounds corny as fuck, but it does hold merit, right? But yeah, so this is the perfectly ultimate Great Moth build. The ace monster of Weevil Underwood, trying to bring it in today's era in Yu-Gi-Oh! The best that I can. Um, if they come out with some new cards in the future that can help get, Great Moth or even perfectly ultimate Great Moth on the field easier, because I'm pretty sure they would, considering that these days they seem like they're supporting older cards, you know, then there's a chance that we could see something that could possibly get these monsters on the field easier, because in order for them to thrive in today's era in Yu-Gi-Oh, they need to do with this what they did um, for this card right here, Flying Fortress Skyfire. What they did was, since this card right here was so difficult to get on the field, it took three monsters on the field, and three specific monsters on the field, in order for you to get out Flying Fortress Skyfire. So in order to help ease that difficulty, what they did was that they came out with hold on, look at that monster. I can't remember the name, but I know it has the effect in there. Like, they came out with Dark Flat Top, which is a synchro monster, but it can special summon one flying fortress Skyfire from your graveyard, ignoring its summoning conditions. You can special summon one from your graveyard. Um, and that's very helpful. So if they come out with like a dark flat top monster or card or something like that, maybe something called like Forced Evolution or something like that, where you can target Petted Moth when it's equipped with Kakuna Evolution or something like that, or any, I don't know, like maybe, what I'm saying? Yeah, like when little Petted Moth is equipped with Kakuna Evolution, you can activate that card, and you can special summon one Great Moth from your hand or deck or graveyard, or I don't know, something like that, ignoring its summoning conditions. Then that would be good, because I think that would be more helpful in today's era in Yu-Gi-Oh when using a monster like this. But since a card like that isn't out yet, um, this is the best that I could do. So in the future, that remains to be seen. But nevertheless, hope you guys enjoy the build. I have used it before. It's difficult to use, but you can get some wins off of it. It just takes patience, man. And this is one of those things where people are really going to have to focus on using patience. Um, Last but not least, I just want to say that, as I mentioned when I first got started with retro modernization, you guys can look at the playlist in my introduction and disclaimer video, the very first video in the playlist. I mentioned that, I did not know how long retro modernization was going to last, and it's getting to that point where these videos are going to start coming out a lot slower. Normally, I did them on a weekly basis, but the builds that I'm making now, it's like they take more time to make because they're getting very difficult to create. This one, like I had to do literally research for hours on end, and that takes up a lot of time considering what else I do on this channel. So I had to really focus just to get this out and make this playable. But it is what it is. So I am taking deck suggestions. If you feel, if understand that retro modernization is about taking older cards and bringing them in today's era in Yu-Gi-Oh. So if you feel like there was like an older card that people have claimed is very difficult to use or to get out, and you think that I could make a good deck out of it after what you've seen with all the other retro modernizations I build, hey, just leave a comment, under the video. I'll take a look at it. I'll take a, I'll try to make it work. And yeah, you guys will probably be the reason why retro modernization lasts longer than I intended. Because I said when it runs its course, it runs its course. Because there's only so many, difficult builds and all that people have claimed and complained about, that were difficult to use and whatnot. And I've pretty much touched on the majority of them. So it is what it is right now. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoy the build. Peace, and I'll see you guys for another retro modernization.